Tonight, Lex Luthor tries to show us just how evil he can be by being a capitalist. Eclipso shows up, forcing us to remember that the Black Diamond probability was a thing, and Anton Arcane is stuck in the worst possible hell imaginable, with an adorable little bunny rabbit. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 107 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and we're still just trucking on through Villains Month. We are officially halfway done. We have done 26 villains. After this episode we'll have done, on the fly math, 40 of them. And we're just going to keep on making progress. But before I get into that, officially, I do need to give a little bit of a thing here. I know I said this last week, but I'm going to just keep on bringing it up every once in a while. If you are interested in listening to just a single title from this show, and you don't want to have to go through each individual episode to try to track it down, over on the YouTube channel, if you are listening to this on audio, if you're listening to it on video, then hi, you're already here. How's it going? On the channel, I am uploading individualized segments from every one of these episodes. I am taking it apart and I am putting them each up as their own independent videos. So if you want to see just the Batman stuff or just the Superman stuff, I will be putting them into their own categorized playlists and you can check them out one after another without having to dive your way through every single episode of this show. Now that that's out there, I'll probably say it again next week because it's something that I really want to try to get off the ground. So please check it out if you get some time. Anyway, comics for this week. We have a bunch of B-listers. I swear to God, there's not like a single A-lister in this whole thing, except for one. So this week we have comics covering The Penguin, Ra's al Ghul, Clayface, Scarecrow, Lex Luthor, Black Hand, The Rogues, Dial E, Shadow Thief, Cheetah, Deathstroke, Eclipso, and Anton Arcane from Swamp Thing. And if you're asking, oh wait, the A-lister in there, that's Lex Luthor, right? Wrong. Lex Luthor, A-lister, are you kidding me? No, the A-lister's the one I left off the list. We also have a comic dealing with Hell. You remember Hell from Superman Hell on Earth? He was by far the most breakout character of the whole series, and now he's back with a fantastic issue that certainly cannot be missed. God, do I love it. I definitely did not give it the lowest rating this week. No. In fact, A-lister, bump him up to S-lister, baby. Anyway, this bit has ran its course. Let's go ahead and jump into the comics, starting with the Batman villains. Batman 23.3, aka The Penguin, written by Frank Tieri, art by Christian Duce. So we open up with a couple of security cameras at the Iceberg Casino, and he's like, look, I'm an honorable man. People win at my casino. I let them have their winnings. For instance, we lost lost $1 million last week. The week before we lost $400,000 to slots, but just now, we're losing $35,000 at a blackjack table. And that seems small, but these guys are cheating. So, can't have that. And we see that the guys are a pair of brothers that were a failed Vegas magic act called the Illusionists. And so they are pulling some sleight of hand stuff in order to cheat at blackjack. And as they're counting their winnings, Lark, who is head of security, comes up with some big goons and says, gentlemen, how about you escort us over here real quick? And they're like, oh, so this is how the Iceberg Casino treats winners, huh? And Penguin's like, no, because you didn't win. So here's what's going to happen, guys. You're going to leave your winnings behind and we'll let you go scot-free. And he's just like, no. And Penguin's like, no, I'm sorry, do you not know? I'm the Penguin. What are you saying? He's like, yeah. Here's the thing, Tweety. We know that in Detective Comics, you were forced out of your role by your underling, and you only just now got your name back, and your underling took the name of Emperor Penguin. Like, how humiliating is that? That Emperor Penguin, he took your name too. That is so sad. You're a sad little man, and there's nothing you can do about it to us. So what do you think you're going to do? And one of the goons reaches for a gun, and Penguin's like, you know what? Lark, will you escort these gentlemen outside? And he's just like, oh, look at that. Yeah, he wants to have a little one-on-one with us, huh? And he's like, oh, one of Zircher's goons. And as Penguin and them step outside, he, of course, pulls out his umbrella gun, starts shooting. The other side of the gun turns into a knife. He stabs a bunch of them and kills them all with his own two hands. And Penguin, as soon as the fight's over, turns to Lark and is like, I haven't killed anyone with my bare hands in like 3 years. Felt good. And Lark's like, well, you could have fooled me. Anyway, were you really going to let them go if they gave back the money? And he's just like, no, of course not. But like, I figured I would give it a shot because, hey, why not? So then he says, oh, by the way, do these guys have families? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm sure they do. It's like, well, now they don't. See to it. So next day in front of GCPD, these guys turn up dead on the steps, and news is reporting on it. News then goes up to the governor, saying, hey, Governor Winston, what are you going to do? And he's just like, well, we have an idea as to the last place these men were seen was the Iceberg Casino, so that's where we're going to start looking. We believe this has something to do with the Penguin. And Lark is like, sir, is this going to be a thing? Do we have to kill the governor? And Penguin's like, no, you're so naive. You're so stupid, Lark. And he pulls out a little scrapbook and he's like, yeah, no. His family and my family have been friends for generations. In fact, he defended me from bullies when we were growing up in high school and middle school. We're close friends. He's totally chill. This is all just part of the act. He says, oh, we'll look into it, and then nothing ever comes of it. By the way, he's coming by for dinner. So they meet up for dinner, and they're having a nice little thing. And Penguin's like, you put on a pretty good show there, Carter. And Carter's like, yeah, Penguin wasn't a show. Here's the thing. You are a monster. You have done horrible things. We know it, and I've brushed it under the rug long enough, but you're no longer that scared little kid that was bullied. You've become your own monster. So I am going to be coming after you, and I am going to put you down. And he calls out his assistant and says, like, yeah, we're going to turn your Iceberg Casino into an indoor ice skating rink, and we're going to re-renovate the entire downtown area around you for good old-fashioned family entertainment. And Penguin's like, all right, you know what? That's fair enough. Do you think you can do that? So be it. All right, pour the champagne, hands a glass over to him. All right, cheers, and may the best man win. And before he's even done his sentence, Governor's passed out. He's coming to in a dark room later on, and Penguin's like, oh, hey, looks like you can't handle your liquor, buddy. And Governor's like, you drugged me. What the hell? And he's like, oh, those are some very strong accusations. I would watch who you're accusing, especially a man in your situation. And he flips on the light, and we see that the governor is naked, covered in blood, with a woman missing her head on the bed. And Penguin's like, can I offer you a hanky? So then Penguin explains, oh, yes, I don't know what happened to you. You left my home after dinner, and then we got this surveillance cam that we had set up in the hotel room here, and we see that he is just roided out on venom that he was dosed with and proceeded to kill this woman. And Penguin's like, we don't even know what happened to her head. We think you might have eaten it. And that causes him to throw up. And it's like, oh, and just in case you try to say that you've never met this woman before, we have this text conversation that you had with her just minutes before you met up with her here, saying, hey, I need to see you now. So, yeah, you're extra screwed, buddy. And Carter's like, you're going to frame me? That's low even for you. And it's like, or all of this could go away if you just don't look into it. You just back off. Because I'm the Penguin, and those who forget that need to be taught a lesson. So the next day, the governor calls a press conference. He gets up in front of TV cameras. He stands up and he's like, you know what? Sometimes the bullies get it right. He pulls out a gun, blows out his brains live on TV. And Penguin's like, oh, go ahead and buy some flowers for the family, the biggest one you can get. And leave me be. So at that point, he reaches into his desk, pulls out that same scrapbook from before, and we see all of the bullies that made fun of him throughout the years have their faces taped over with news clippings of their deaths, of how they died seemingly in accidents. And he says, oh, poor Carter, everyone who crosses the Penguin gets what they deserve, because the Penguin will always have the last word. And that's that. It's dark. It's very brutal. I enjoyed it. I think I was on record saying back at the beginning of the New 52 that I forget who was, I think it was Greg Hurwitz. I could be wrong. But art by Szymon Kudranski, Penguin, Pain and Prejudice. That was a fantastic series that was done. And I think this is in that same sort of vein. It's the same sort of thing where he just goes that extra mile to burn everything to the ground out of just the smallest of slights. So yeah, Penguin's an interesting character. I really look forward to reading more of him wherever he does pop up. But for this one, I'm going to give this one solid 8. It's a very well done issue. It's brutal, it's dark, and it's a good look into Penguin as a character, even if we don't see his origin as a whole. Batman and Robin 23.3, aka Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins, written by James Tynion IV, art by Jeremy Haun. So we open up in 1285 with a bunch of knights and crusades and whatnot storming across the desert, and we see it's told from the perspective of the prince who is leading the charge. He approaches this dark tower saying a demon lives inside of it, and he pounds on the door saying like, "Oh, I am leading this crusade in the name of the Pope. You will open your door." And this white-haired man opens up and he's like, "Oh, hello, my master's been expecting you." And he's like, "What? How did you can speak our language?" And he's like, yes, I can. I speak a lot of languages. Anyway, come on inside. And all the crusaders come inside and just like, "We hear that a demon is living in this place." And he's like, "Well, he is many things after all." And he leads these crusaders deep down into the ground of this tower. And one by one, each of the crusaders is killed silently from behind until finally it's just the prince left. And as he enters the room, the servant closes the door behind him. The prince pounds on the door and he's just like, "Oh God, oh geez, this can't be happening." And he sees Ra's al Ghul emerging from a Lazarus pit. And he's just like, "Ah, hello, how's it going?" And he's like, "Are you a demon or a man?" He's like, "Both and neither. I'm Ra's al Ghul, bitch." So then we flash forward to now. Ra's is being approached by a random nobody who is representing the secret society. And he's like, "That story about the dude from the Crusades, you let him live in order to spread your legend to the West, but that was the first time that you have had any like real noting. So you were at least that old. Secret Society super duper wants you to be invested in them, man. Like they're sending all these people. They want you to help you achieve your goals." And Ra's is like, "You think that you can help me? You think that anybody can help me? Let's see about that." And he sicks some man bats on the goons that the Secret Society sent, leaving only this one guy left over. And he's just like, whoa, dude, we're coming here with an offer to help you. And he's just like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, enough. Let us sword fight." And he's just like, "Well, you've picked my thing," because apparently this villain is sword fighting. That's his thing. And he's like, "Well, I know all about your history, Ra's. I've studied you intently." And he says, "Yes, you are a great one. You have this great legend. You learned all these secret arts of death, and you mastered them over the centuries. You found the Lazarus pits via the Well of Sins, and you, over time, gathered a bunch of disciples who learned in the same arts as you in death. And over time, you guided them and changed them into becoming the League of Assassins that gave them a purpose." And we see throughout the centuries, he makes his decision to change the world as he sees fit. We see that he's responsible for getting the Opium War started. We see that he gets cholera sent to America. We see that he's responsible for training the man who shot the Archduke Ferdinand. So all of this is because of him. He's been guiding the world secretly in the shadows for centuries. And the sword guy is saying like, "Ah, yes, however, you have been pushing so hard for destruction, for a final world or whatnot. There's only so much that you've actually been able to accomplish. And I mean, even more recently than that, your daughter has been killed." And Ra's is like, "Okay, watch what you're talking about now." And this whole time they're sword fighting, by the way. And just like, "Oh yes, your final chapter thus far has been you wanted to leave a legacy behind? What happens when you do finally achieve the perfect world and you get it to how you want it to be? But you didn't count on Batman. And Ra's is like, shut your mouth, bro. And he's like, yes, you thought you found the perfect groom for your daughter, and you sword fought shirtless with him for some reason, but then he decided to stop you. He always stopped your plans. You never realized that by seeking him out, you set your own downfall in motion. And we see all the different times that Batman interrupted Raz's plans and got in the way. But then we see that, no, Damian was still a thing. And then Talia started her own plans for Batman Incorporated. And then it ended with Talia being killed. And the sword fighter guy points out, like, yes, you have lost everything. Everything has been taken from you because of Batman. And he's just like, I'm sorry, you said you were coming here to try to get me to join you, and you've been like a super dick this whole time. And he's like, well, I was just getting to my point. The secret society, we've killed Batman. He's dead. He no longer stands in your way. So we just want to help you along now that the one thing that's always stopped you is finally gone. And he knocks down the sword fighter, and he's like, you idiot. And he starts laughing at him. And he's like, you think that death is enough to stop Batman? If there's one thing I know about Batman, he is as determined and stubborn to not die as I am. So you bet your bottom dollar he is still alive and he will destroy you guys. So in order to be formal about this, I reject your invitation. And so the sword fighter guy apparently also has electricity powers. Sure, he goes to fire at Ra's. One of his goons jumps in the way, and he's like, oh, you're constantly hiding behind other people, Ra's, and no one's here to defend you now. And then all of a sudden, 2 harpoons come out of the wall and string this guy up against the side of the building. And he's like, all right, let me tell you something straight up here, sword guy. You didn't find me. You didn't track me down. I led you to me. And the whole reason why is because I know that your masters are cowards. They wouldn't dare come face me themselves lest they would die on their own right. So they sent you here as a human sacrifice to try to appease me. So yeah, I'm going to kill you now, and I am going to stand by the sidelines just to see what new world your masters bring. But just know that I play the much, much longer game. And no matter what they have in store, I will be the one that decides how things end. So, yeah, that's how it ends. And then it says, look forward to Red Hood and the Outlaws, which I don't think is a sentence that has ever been uttered in the history of mankind, but regardless, they say it here. So, I like it. I've always been interested in Ra's al Ghul. I never did go back and read, like, the Head of the Demon stuff, or, like, where he and Talia originally hooked up. He being Batman. I understand pronouns are an issue here. But I've always been interested in him because he is one of those villains that doesn't feel as crazy, He's much more on the intellectual equal as Batman. And obviously the idea that he's immortal is equally as interesting. So I am down with this idea of, Ra's is a master planner. He has this idea of how he wants the world to go, and he has all the time in the world to make it happen. So I think this issue does a very good job at showing that. Overall, I'm going to give this one a 7.5. It's very good. I think the biggest downfall is the fact that they say check out Red Hood for more. No one's going to do that, guys. Don't try to push you over there. So yeah, it's a solid issue in its own right, though. So 7.5 feels right. Batman the Dark Knight 23.3, aka Clayface, written by John Layman, art by Cliff Richards. So, I know that in Dark Knight right now we're doing a Clayface story, like in issue 23 or so. This doesn't really fit into that, which I think is a missed opportunity, but hey, whatever, it's still something. We're introduced to Clayface, who's walking down in the sewer with a bunch of other goons, and one other guy who apparently is the guy who planned this job. And he's like, yeah, before I was Clayface, I was Basil Carlo, a millionaire, a movie star. I had it all. I had big plans, but I had a temper. And I ended up punching a director, and that kind of set me back in my career. So at that point, as they're walking down the sewer, Clayface says, hey, we're going to take a left here. And the guy who actually planned the thing says, no, we're going to take a left way up there. Right here is nothing. He's like, it's a jewelry store. I wanted to hit it real quick. And the guy just starts freaking out on Clayface. He's like, dude, I have had this job planned for 6 months now. I have it down to the second. I am not screwing it up because you want to go off book and do some random ass little other petty crime. And we get a flashback to the director who basically tells him the same thing, saying, you're an idiot. Don't try to improv. You're just pretty face. And Clayface is like, okay, yeah, that's an opinion. And then immediately just starts killing everybody. He impales them with things. He crushes them with hammers. Everyone's dead. And he's like, I still have my temper. Maybe I should have waited until the robbery was done, gotten some money, but oh well. And by the way, if these guys are, attached to any of the major crime families, I might have a problem. So I need to make sure they aren't ever found. Got to lay low for a while. So he transforms into one of them, climbs out of a manhole cover, and as he gets up to the top, everything's chaos. Forever evil's going on. And he even asks, like, hey, everybody, what's going on? And he's like, the Justice League is dead. It's forever evil now. And he's like, neat. Guess I can do whatever I want then. So he just turns back into Clayface. He makes his way to a bar nearby that apparently just all of the Batman D-tier villains go to. And he's like, hey, barkeep, what's going on with the TV? Why does it just say this world is ours? And he's like, that's on every channel. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. So at that point, Clayface overhears Zebra Man talking to the White Rabbit, saying like, oh yeah, they're called the Secret Society, and they're the ones who killed the Justice League. They're going to be taking over everything. And it's just like, how do you get recruited into the Secret Society? Asks Clayface. And White Rabbit's like, honey, if you want to get recruited, they'll recruit you. They only care about the best of the best. So, yeah, I don't think you're really going to be asked. So then Clayface is like, I could be the best of the best. And then all of a sudden, a resistance message comes on the TV saying, everyone, justice is not dead. We have this base out in the desert. We will be attacking them. Come and join the resistance. And then I swear to God, I know this guy. He looks kind of like King Shark, but he's not. He throws a beer bottle at the TV, and Clayface is like, hey man, I was watching that. And he's like, that resistance, like, it's stupid. There is no resistance. No one's able to stand up to the crime syndicate, the secret society. They're the Justice League, but evil. Like, everything is just going to go to evil. Yeah, these things are going to pop up like tiny little blips, but they're going to get crushed instantly. But, I guess if somebody wanted to go out and beat them for the crime syndicate, it'd be a good way to get noticed. And Clayface is like, that's a good idea. So he punches the guy out for breaking the TV and then makes his way out into the desert. He shapeshifts into a homeless-looking guy and comes up to their base of operations, I guess. And basically says, hey, guys, you mind if I jump into around this fire? And they say, actually, we do mind. You better walk away now unless you want to get beat up. And then Clayface starts beating the crap out of all of them. And he's like, I know this is a military base. I know you're training the resistance. Tell me where they are. And he's about to squeeze one to death. And he's like, it's down in the bunker. It's down the street to the left. So he transforms into a soldier, sneaks his way inside. The soldiers inside are like, all right, everybody, we just got our orders. Prepare to move out. And Clayface immediately hears this. And he's like, actually, no. And he starts beating the crap out of all the soldiers. And the general steps up and he's like, you idiot, you're making such a huge mistake here. And he's like, don't call me an idiot, mister. And he starts beating the ever-living crap out of the rest of them. So once all the soldiers are dead, he goes up to the computer, calls up the Secret Society and says, hey, this is Clayface. I just took care of the resistance. I bet you want me to be part of your Secret Society now. And Secret Society is like, hey, Clayface, did we ask you to do that? And he's like, nah, I was just taking a little bit of initiative. And they're like, right. You goddamned idiot. We set up that resistance. It's a fake resistance. It was meant to draw out all the would-be heroes so that we could kill them all at once. What in the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? You stupid idiot. And they keep on laying into Clayface for like quite some time. But he doesn't get to hear the whole message because as he keeps calling him stupid, he starts breaking all of the stuff inside of this underground bunker. And maybe he accidentally activated it. Maybe the Secret Society did. But regardless, the self-destruct turns on, and he's caught in the explosion. So, being Clayface, he doesn't die. But it takes him a few days to get recombobulated. He eventually makes his way back to the bar, and he's just sitting there, having a drink, feeling sorry for himself. as two guys step up, they're talking about a job of robbing a jewelry store. And it's just like, oh, hey, Clayface, we could use some muscle. You in? And he's like, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. And the narration says, right about then, I came up with my plan of my own, an ambitious one that would put me back on top again. So maybe that then feeds into the Dark Knight story that's currently going on. I don't know. It's a little bit hard to place, but regardless, it's fine. It's a fine story. I'm okay with it. It's not great. I think my biggest issue is the art in a whole is fine. I don't mind it, but the style that Clayface is in makes him look more like a rock monster rather than like oozing clay, which is how I just see him mentally as that. This seems like a totally different character to me, just the way he's drawn, but that's just my own personal take on it. In regards to the story itself, it's basically just saying like, yeah, Clayface is kind of stupid. That's kind of the whole gist of it. It doesn't even go into his backstory that much. It doesn't even say how he gets his powers. It's just Clayface is kind of stupid. So in that regard, it's fine. I can't give it above I can't give it a 7. So I guess I'll give it honestly, I got to give it a 6. It's nothing that the story itself did, but it just feels so middling and average. It feels completely skippable on the whole. Maybe if Clayface has like a really big part to play in one of the Forever Evil tie-ins, I could see it as being necessary, but this feels like they just needed to fill out the month, and this is another of those like major Batman villains that just needed their own book. So yeah, I'll give it a 6. It's skippable at best. Detective Comics 23.3, aka Scarecrow, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Szymon Kudranski. So Scarecrow, for those of you not following the main story, was one of the first people who was actually brought into the secret society, and he was tasked with going out and recruiting other people. So he kind of feels like he's in the upper echelon there. But regardless, this is set kind of further ahead, apparently after an issue or two of Forever Evil Arkham War, I think it's called. I could be wrong. But regardless, we see, a guy screaming. He's been exposed to fear toxin. Scarecrow's talking about it, being like, oh, I love the smell of fear in the morning. And he shows that he is currently in a completely frozen part of town. Turns out that all of the people who were in Arkham Asylum have taken over Gotham piecemeal. Everyone has been divvied up the town. It is led by new Mayor Penguin, who is determined where everything will be, and Scarecrow has made his way into Mr. Freeze's part of town. And we see that he has a goon named Hudson, Scarecrow does, who was tasked with finding Mr. Freeze and bringing him over to Scarecrow. However, Mr. Freeze has frozen him and is saying, hey, why are you in my area, Scarecrow? And he's like, oh, hey, don't want to step on any toes. I'm just here to deliver a message. I'm totally cool. And they talk to each other as like scientists, and they're saying like, ah, yes, your free stuff is beautiful. And he's like, oh, well, your fear toxin's not that bad either. So at that point, he basically says like, yeah, here's the thing. There's news coming out of Blackgate that they are basically mounting an armed rebellion, and they will be coming after Gotham and all of us who have divvied up the city. So I just want to know, like, on behalf of the secret society, we can't really let that stand. We can't let them disrupt our new order. So are you in if they try to launch something? Are you good to come with you? And he's basically like, yeah, here's the thing. I guess so. Sure, I'll be in if you really need me. Mr. Freeze is like, yeah, why not? And he says, yeah, all right, just you've used fear toxin on some of my guys. When are they going to snap out of it? And he's like, oh, they'll be snapped out of it in like an hour. And he's like, cool, that's about how long it'll take your guy to fall. And he's like, all right, well, bye. So Mr. Freeze is in. He waits for Hudson to thaw and then starts making his way across town. And we see they explain, oh, yeah, so many things have changed since the crime syndicate took over. We've divvied up this city, and, I'm not one of them. I'm not one of the crazies like the rest of them in Arkham. No, I'm a scientist. I just want to see how this fear toxin stuff works. And after all, I couldn't be crazy because the secret society entrusted recruitment to me, and I've been handing out their silver coins like crazy. So at that point, we see he makes his way over to the Riddler's district, where apparently he had just taken over the public library, and he walks in and he's like, "Hey, Riddler, got a few riddles for you." And Riddler just immediately is like, "Swims, a joke, and they're in. Those are the answers to your riddles. You're stunningly predictable, Scarecrow." And he's like, "Yeah, sorry, it's not really my forte. Anyway, just wanted to have a little chat with you." And he's like, "Oh, I already know why you're here. It's because of Arkham versus Blackgate, right? That's the whole reason you want me here. Well, here's the thing. I know my place in this. I'm not here. I'm not one of the crazies like those in Arkham. I am a respectable man who just happened to be in Arkham. So, no, I will not be joining your fight, but I won't help on the Blackgate side either. I will be neutral like Switzerland, because Switzerland survives." And Scarecrow's like, "All right, fair enough," and shakes his hand and says goodbye. But then as they're leaving, Riddler's like, "Oh, wait, hold on, Scarecrow, I have a riddle for your goon here, Hudson. Hey, Hudson, what's here today and gone tomorrow?" And Hudson's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Yeah, you will." So they leave, they make their way out. But Riddler does give a little bit of a hint that something else larger is going on, something bigger is happening, and Scarecrow needs to look into it. So at that point, they make their way over to Poison Ivy's area. They hang around for a little bit, but Poison Ivy just doesn't show up. So he starts to pick her flowers, saying, like, if this is anything's going to get her, it's going to be this. And then all of a sudden, they're bum rushed by this guy. And apparently this is Hudson's cousin, who's from Blackgate. And the whole reason they know about the Blackgate plot is because Hudson got it from this cousin and then shanked him, so he died. However, he didn't die. He's now currently roided up on venom, and he's trying to attack them. And as he's trying to attack them, all of a sudden a manhole cover flies off. Killer Croc jumps out and immediately just tears the guy's throat out. It says nobody messes with Killer Croc. And so he steps up, talks to Scarecrow, and he's like, "Scarecrow, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I came to talk to Poison Ivy, man. What are you doing here?" He's like, "I just came up to take care of this guy. By the way, Croc, are you cool with joining the Arkham crew when it comes to war?" He's like, "I'm not a part of this at all. I'm doing my own thing over in Batwoman, and also apparently I'm going to be getting my own tie-in next week, so don't bother me. I'm doing my own thing. Bye." And he jumps back down on the sewer. He's like, "All right, fair enough." Poison Ivy then shows up, and he's like, "Scarecrow, what are you doing in my area?" And he's like, "Oh, just thought I'd come here. I was asking, Riddler was saying something was going on, and then Killer Croc said that he gave up his piece of land to somebody, but he wouldn't say who. So judging by the Venom guy there, I'm going to go ahead and put out that we have a Bane problem coming up." And Poison Ivy's like, "Yeah, and what do I care?" And just like, "Well, your area, your whole thing is plants, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Well, Ultraman blocked out the sun, so it's eternal darkness. Plants don't really survive well in darkness." And she's like, "Yeah, I've noticed. Thanks, Scarecrow." And he's like, "Well, here's the thing. We believe that underneath of Blackgate, there is a new type of generator that is not connected to the grid that's still running. It's the one that's keeping all the Talons frozen from Court of Owls. You could use that, and apparently it's strong enough generators that it could get a greenhouse that's like 10 city blocks in size. So if you're in on the side of Arkham when it comes to our battle against Blackgate, then we will be happy to give that to you." And it's like, "Oh, okay, well, why does the Secret Society care about this?" And it's like, "Oh, they just want to be on the side of the winners, and I want to be on the winning side as well, so will you join us?" And Poison Ivy's like, "Yeah, sure." So finally we get the answer to Riddler's riddle to Hudson, which is what's here today, gone tomorrow. It's Hudson. Scarecrow apparently promised Hudson that he would cure him of his fear of heights, so Scarecrow dangles him over the edge of the building and says, "It's exposure therapy. Let's see how it works," and drops him off the edge, and Hudson dies. So then Scarecrow looks over the city and he's like, we got a war coming on, and when all of this is said and done, when all the obstacles have fallen, Gotham City will be mine." And we look over the entire landscape of Gotham, and we see that each of the skyscrapers has basically been overrun with a different villain's motif. So there's a ventriloquist one, there's a Poison Ivy one, there's a Mr. Freeze one, there's a bunch of them. That's it. It just ends with that. I like the issue in the fact that it gives world building for the upcoming miniseries of, I believe it's Arkham War. I could be wrong on that. But I really wanted this to be something Scarecrow related, I guess, if that makes sense. Szymon Kudranski does such fantastic, like, dark and foreboding art. It would have been great to see the fear toxin take effect with him on the art. But in the end, all we got was them walking around the city and just talking to a bunch of Batman's villains saying, hey, we're all going to band together for this little, like, war thing happening. And honestly, I feel a little bit disappointed in that. I really wanted to see some fantastic art from Kudranski, but unfortunately, it's just not meant to be. In terms of the story they did tell, it was okay. It is just kind of feeling like, hey, everybody, check out the Arkham War thing. It is called Arkham War. Great. Sorry, I just noticed that printed in the book here. Yeah, it's a nice little lead-in, I guess, but it also feels completely unnecessary because it could all just be explained by, hey, one panel of the guys from Blackgate are coming and they've got their own army built up. Someone's taking care of that. We have to fight as Arkham. That's like 3 panels, max. Instead, it was an entire issue here, which frankly did not feel necessary, especially as like, it feels like half of the people they met are not joining in on the fight. So that's a bit strange. But regardless, I'm just rambling at this point. I would say this is probably, it's a 6.5, and that's disappointing because I do really like the art. I really do. But it can't push it past that point of it feeling like an unnecessary tie-in that's just setting up a different miniseries. So, yeah, sad to say. Action Comics 23.3, aka Lex Luthor, written by Charles Soule, art by Raymund Bermudez. So this is not an origin story, this is not backstory, this is just a day in the life of Lex Luthor right before Forever Evil happens. So we see that he was in jail. He's like, all right, well, I've had enough of that. Time for me to go out and be Lex Luthor businessman. And he still has his face scarred. And I'm so happy, I have to say, that this issue finally explains what happened, not to his face, but to heal his face. So as he's walking out of the prison, he turns to a guard and be like, hey, these are the prison clothes that Lex Luthor wore. You could sell these for like millions of dollars to collectors. Come over here and take it. And the guard is like, and he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So he walks out, hops in a helicopter with his secretary waiting, and as the secretary's name is Casey, by the way. As he's getting into the helicopter, Casey's giving him a rundown of like, okay, well, these lawyers have done whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he just stops and he's like, hey, Casey, I'm getting out of jail. Where the hell is Superman? And she's like, I don't know. I checks online. Apparently there's been no sightings of Superman for like the past 8 hours. And he's just like, I don't like this. Superman is obsessed with me. Why would he not be here? Why would he not see me getting out of jail and like threaten me as he always does? And just like, I don't know. Maybe he just, I don't know. And so he's like, all right, well, start the Ghost Town project. And it's like, okay, I guess, sure. And he says burn the prison outfit as well, just out of spite because he doesn't need the money. So we go back to LexCorp headquarters, and Casey explains that there's someone named Noel Spheris who is trying to do a hostile takeover of a tiny Luthor subsidiary that makes like fertilizer or something like that. And we see some plastic surgeons are in the room, and they are doing plastic surgery on Lex's face. And long story short, they fix him. He now looks normal. He no longer has a scarred face. And we see Lex's plan is for this Noel guy, Spheris. He tells him, okay, call him up and tell him to back off, or else I'm going to make him beg that I buy his company for just pennies on the dollar before the end of the day. And so theoretically that is enough to scare him, but we see, okay, let's go ahead and just give a little extra push. Go ahead and go into our system. There's a file on Spheris. Password is this. Go ahead and follow the instructions there. And he once again asks, where's Superman? It's like, still no sign of him. It's been 12 hours now. And just like, okay, we're going to go ahead and start something up. So he goes down to his Lex space, and he tells some astronauts, hey, you're going up into space, lower Earth orbit, and you'll follow the instructions when you get up there. And they say, okay, sure, why not? So they climb up there. Lex goes down to his armory, his gun range, and he's like, well, been a while since I got to have some fun. Let's test out the new weapons. And he hops into one of his mech suits and just starts firing off these guns at Superman dummies, firing off missiles and testing the booster systems. And he's like, all right, cool. Goes down to the scientists and they're like, as you can see, we've kept it updated and you've been in jail. And he's like, throw it away and start again. And you need to fix at least 14 different things that I see is wrong with it by the time I get back, or you're all fired. And they're like, yes, Mr. Luthor. So we go up into space and they start to follow Lex's instructions, which are basically shutting down the main engines and going into a free fall back into orbit. So we then cut over to Lex, who's getting a breakdown on the Spherus thing. And it's like, oh, he's called 7 times. He's getting desperate. And it's like, oh, okay, go ahead. Bring him up on the phone. And Spherus is just like, okay, fine. You want me to beg? You want me to plead? I'll buy back. I'll back off your business. I'll do whatever you need. And it's just like, oh, no. I told you that you would beg me to buy your business. We'll talk then. Hangs up on them. These people out in space do a fake call to Superman saying, hey, our engines are dead. We need you, Superman. Come and get us. And they just are slowly drifting into Earth's atmosphere, doing re-entry. And Superman still doesn't show up. And he's like, okay, yeah, that is weird. That is strange. So at that point, the Spheres guy calls back and says, please, my company is tanking. Buy it now. You said you would. And he said, no. I said that I would get you to beg. And I have. But I'm going to let you sit with your company until it is worth nothing. Goodbye. And he turns off the thing. We see the astronauts in space. Now that Superman hasn't responded, they're like, well, guess he's not coming. Let's go ahead and start back up the engines. But as they go to start it, they're not turning on. They're basically falling into Earth's orbit, and we see them explode into the atmosphere. And Casey's like, what in the hell was that? What happened? And it's just like, oh, see, my whole plan there was if I went out and I actually went up and saved them as Lex Luthor, because that was Casey's original thing she was saying. It was just like, oh, you can go and save the astronauts and make yourself a hero, where Superman doesn't. Very smart of you, sir. But he points out, no. If I went up there was a chance I could fail. There was a chance that I would look like an idiot. But now that I've let them die and Superman didn't come to save them, people are blaming Superman. I had nothing to do with this. So this is all on Superman's hands now. And as a little added twist, I made it so that it exploded right over top of Spherus' house. So he just lost all of his home and stuff in the explosion. Win-win for me. And Casey's just like, oh my God, you are as bad as they say. I'm calling 911. And she tries to call 911. Lex takes her phone. It's just like, oh, Casey, you shouldn't have done that. Because now I know you're one of them. You're not like me. You're not willing to do what's necessary. And he pushes her off the edge of the building. And immediately he walks back in and it's just like, all right, well, computer, hire me another secretary. Go ahead and get a bouquet of flowers for all the astronauts' families. Set up a press conference saying how much of an accident it is, and oh yeah, I have to go meet up with Thomas Cord about buying his company out from under him. And as he's walking into his helicopter, he's like, it's a good day. It's a good day. Feels like nothing's really in my way at all. I'm having a good one. And we see the news secretary is sitting there already in the helicopter, just being like, oh, Lex, I'm so looking forward to working with you, Mr. Luthor. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And he's just like, well, we'll see about that. And that's the issue. I like it. I enjoyed it. I think that it is extremely well written, of all these interwoven plots. I did a horrible job of explaining it, but it is a great job of just showing the intricacies and all the things that Lex is willing to do just to screw over people for the pettiest of crimes. It's magnificent. So yeah, I gotta say this is probably a solid 8. I'm thinking it's really good. Art style's great. I like the way it makes Lex so menacing. And it does bridge that little gap of how did we get to where we last saw Lex locked up in a jail with his face messed up to now. I kind of wish it had a actual story reason and like why his face was messed up to begin with. But if we're just going to move on, then we're just going to move on. So 8. Superman 23.3, aka Hell, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Dan Jurgens and Ray McCarthy. So Hell on Earth happened, and at the end of that, he traveled through time and ended back up on Krypton in the past and was discovered by Jor-El. I get that much. So this issue picks up, I guess, immediately afterwards. Hell is in a healing tank. He's being analyzed by Jor-El, and he's like, my God, this discovery we've made, it's incredible. Inside of his chest is this shard of kryptonite, and it's highly irradiated. Also, I've been analyzing his DNA, and he seems to have absorbed all of this radiation and such, and it's given him incredible powers. And I also speculate that, and he's just telling all this to his random lab co-workers and such. He's like, oh, I also speculate that even if a normal Kryptonian were to absorb all this stuff, they would also gain incredible powers. It's mind-blowing. We could do all this crazy stuff. And basically at that point, he's like, okay, regardless, this guy should be dead by all rights, but because he was so super powerful, he was able to survive that Kryptonian or kryptonite shard to the chest. So yeah, he's incredibly lucky, and we'll see what more we can get out of him. So then Jor-El is called to the Temple of Ra or whatever, where there's a council waiting for him, and we see Hell he sees all this. He is able to astral project himself in order to follow Jor-El and see what else is going on. And we see him staring at the other lab coworkers and saying you guys all suck because Jor-El is the smartest there is. He is God amongst you mortals. So he makes his way, follows Jor-El to Ra's temple, and basically Jor-El's just explaining to this council yeah, okay, so we ran some tests on the shard of kryptonite inside of this guy's chest. Turns out that the only way that it could possibly form is from the planet of Krypton exploding. So he is very clearly a time traveler from a future where our planet has exploded. And everyone is like, what? You're saying our planet's going to explode? That's heresy. That's crazy talk. And he's like, well, I'm not saying now. I'm just saying eventually. That's going to be the fate of it. And now that we know that, we can fight against it. We can work against it. We can do something. And this one dude who's super religious or something comes up, and he's just like, oh, and you think that Ra would let these people die, and how dare you say so? You would cause an uproar, you would cause a panic. We will not listen to you. And Jor-El's like, guys, it's the truth. I don't know what you want me to say here. This isn't some hypothesis. This is my conclusion. This is what the evidence points to. And they say, okay, Jor-El, thanks for whatever it is you did. Now get out of here. And as Jor-El's leaving, Hell is like, yeah, man, you stick it to him. You're so cool. I love you. I mean, I like you as a friend. And so Zod pops up, and he's like, hey, Jor-El, what's going on, man? And so they start catching up, and Hell's like, I don't really know much about that guy. I'm not sure why don't I recognize him as much? And we see Jor-El and Zod go to Jor-El's essentially tinkering shop, which is full of all of these huge technological advances. And Hell's like, I don't remember this room. Why don't I remember this room? Why am I not familiar here? And Jor-El points to his sea of things that he's got, and he's like, yeah, I plan on collecting artifacts from all throughout Krypton's history. I've already got 3 eras down. It's all this crazy stuff. And we see Hell pauses on a dragon, which is the same dragon that he sent in his very first issue to attack Superman. And he's like, wait a minute, hold on. But that thing shouldn't be around. That was a thing he shouldn't have been able to know about at all. And then we see a map of solar systems because Jor-El is planning on investigating the idea of what different suns do to Kryptonian cells. So he's sending out a rocket ship to these places to see what the cells do. And Hell's like, wait a minute, that's the chart of the solar system I visited, but he shouldn't know that. And then Jor-El unveils his spaceship, and it says House of L on the side. And so Hell puts his hand over some of the letters, and it says Hell, like the H from house, and then L. And he's like, wait a minute, oh my God. And all of a sudden, Hell comes to a realization. I don't know what the realization is. I can hypothesize here, based off what I'm seeing, is that Some cells were sent into space. They were irradiated. They got hit with like kryptonite and stuff. They were sent through like wormholes and whatnot. And as such, the cells ended up growing and they became what is Hell. And Hell then kind of rationalized, using the ship's technology and stuff, this past, and he just made up this entire past for himself. He was never actually a guy that really existed on Krypton. And as he comes to this realization, his body shoots up awake. He uses his psychic powers to just kill the scientists in the room and causes a psychic disturbance to everyone else in the area. So Jor-El sees him pop out of the tank and he's like, okay, my other hypothesis was this guy's a time traveler. He's coming here for the ship because it's something about a walking paradox. That's going to be a problem because if he gets to do whatever he wants with the ship, he could be a threat to all of time and space. And Zod's like, sounds to me like you need to blow up the ship, bro. And he's like, good call. Self-destruct sequence, activate. But Hell busts into the room and says, nah, I don't want that ship. You made me think I was born. He's like, I didn't do anything. I don't know what you're talking about. This is completely scientifical, just craziness. And Hell starts attacking Jor-El, starts like blowing up his lab and such. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm here to tell you there's no such thing as hope out there, father. And Jor-El's like, okay, well, we can make some hope. Well, you got all these powers. You could help save Krypton. Don't you want to save Krypton? And Hell's like, no, I don't want to save Krypton. And he snaps Jor-El's neck, throws him down to the ground, takes the cells that were going to go out into space on the ship, replaces it with his own cells, and then fires it off into space. And we see then a portal opens up, and Hell says, I don't want to save Krypton, I want to rule it. And he walks into the portal with a dead Jor-El behind him. I don't know, man. Obviously, this can't be like the real timeline because Jor-El is dead and Jor-El needs to be alive long enough to give birth to Clark. So, I don't know what's going on. We got some time travel shenanigans and like they just completely retcon / changed Hell's backstory where already I thought it was a bit convoluted, but now it's like, no, turns out he never existed to begin with. He's a walking paradox. Sure, man, whatever. I can't speak highly of this issue. I mean, it might turn out into something cool, but so far I've disliked everything Hell has even touched, and this is definitely up there. Because it's not even Hell's story in the end. It's the story of, like, Jor-El messing up in an alternate timeline, and then Hell is just, like, privy to it. Maybe, I guess. So, yeah, I gotta give this one, like, I'm giving it a 4. And that's mainly because I really do enjoy the art. I think it looks good. But if Hell never shows up again, it will paradoxically be far too soon. So it's a 4. Green Lantern 23.3, aka Black Hand, written by Charles Soule, art by Alberto Ponticelli. So the last time we saw Black Hand, I think he was killed out in deep space. I could be wrong. But regardless, we open up somewhere in California, Coast City, and we see some mortuary workers doing cremation, and they're loading up a casket just to burn off the body. And turns out that they work in an asylum, or they get bodies from an asylum, and they're like, boy, a lot of bad people must have come through here. Good thing they're all dead and definitely not coming back. And so they go out into the back lot where there's this giant hole in the ground, and they just dump the ashes in there because no one ever claims them. So they just dump them here. Meanwhile, the Black Lantern ring descends from the sky, lands in the pile of ashes, and reanimates a body. But just as soon as it reanimates, it falls apart into dust and turns into Black Hand, who is missing his hand, by the way. So he moves forward. He sees the hand from the body that was just reanimated. He attaches it to his own arm. And he's like, cool, I can wear my ring on this. So he walks into the mortuary, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on. This place feels really, really familiar. And he looks at the name of the place, and it's the Hand Brothers Mortuary. It is his the place that he grew up in, more or less. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. That's the thing. I remember that. And then we see 2 security guards come in, and they're like, whoa, hold on, buddy. Who the hell are you? And Haun comes after him and just like, hey, I'm on Earth. I know that much, but I'm kind of blanking on the rest of it. Could you help me remember? And he starts moving towards them. They fire off some tasers at him. He goes down on the ground and is stunned and is just like, okay, well, we got to take him to jail. Like, this is probably a job for like Green Lantern or something, but apparently all of the superheroes have disappeared because Forever Evil's just starting. So take him to jail. So in jail, he's laying there, and his like cellmate in the cell next to him just keeps on talking, keeps on telling him, just be like, hey man, I hear all the superheroes are missing, and all the cops, they're out taking care of the stuff that the superheroes normally do, so they're just ignoring us up in these cells. They can't do that. And Black Hand's like, please shut up. I would much rather prefer the quiet. And he just keeps talking and talking. He's yelling for the cops, saying, you can't do this, we got rights. And a cockroach comes into Black Hand's room, and Black Hand squishes it and then uses his abilities to bring it back to life. And he's like, go and find something bigger than yourself, kill it, and then bring it back to me. And so we see this cycle repeating over and over again. Cockroach kills bigger cockroaches kill a mouse kills a cat, until finally we get to a full-blown human that shows up in front of Black Hand's cell. And his cellmate's like, what in the hell is that? Jesus Christ, oh my God, it's a zombie. And Black Hand's like, could you just make him quiet? I don't want him to talk anymore. And so we hear a fight break out, and then the cellmate comes around also as a zombie. They unlock the cell door, and Black Hand's like, okay, now, what was I doing? I was trying to do something. So he makes his way out of the building, and he sees just everything's on fire, everything's burning, it's all chaos, and he's like, huh, okay. I don't get distracted. I need to figure out what I'm doing. So at that point, he's like, I'm thinking of something like a ring, but not like my ring. It's like a rainbow of ring. I don't know. It's confusing. And so he walks his way through the city, and all the people who have died throughout the city, as he walks by them, they start coming back to life. And as he approaches a police barricade, they're like, Jesus Christ, this is an actual zombie apocalypse. All right, men, we all practice for this. Aim for the heads. So they all start shooting out all the zombies. And Black Hand's like, no, stop, please. Please stop that. So all the zombies are taken out, but Black Hand's left, and he's like, okay, I do need something that's going to be able to protect me. And he searches throughout all the cops for something dead inside one of them. One of the cops apparently just got a vaccine, so dead virus cells inside of him, and uses that to corrupt the cop into then corrupting all the other cops into becoming zombies. So he's like, okay. Anyway, I remember now where I need to go. And he makes his way out to a graveyard outside the building. He's like, yep, okay, it's this way. This feels right. And he ends up in front of the grave of Hal Jordan's father. And as he touches the gravestone, he gets a flash to all of his memories of Green Lantern. He's like, right, yes, Green Lantern, that was a thing. And he left me for dead out in space. And right, God, I'm Black Hand. Got it now. I'll remember that. So then he starts talking to Hal Jordan's dad, Martin Jordan, through the grave, and he's like, oh yeah, no, this is totally rude of me, come on up. And Hal's dad comes out of the ground, and he's like, yeah, did you know your son took my arm? I think that's very rude of him. So then Martin rips off his own arm, being a zombie, hands it over to Black Hand, and he's like, oh yeah, no, that's perfect, that's super smart. And he attaches it to his own arm, puts the ring on, so he's like, so now, when I go after Green Lantern, I'm going to be able to kill him with his own father's hand. That's dark. Thanks for that, man. That's great. But yeah, in the meantime, and he uses his powers and summons all the dead in the graveyard, and he's like, let's go find you something to eat. And that's the ending. I like it. I gotta say, as someone who doesn't really know much about Black Hand, only being exposed to what was in the Jeff Johns run right towards the end, it doesn't really do much more to inform me, you know? It doesn't really tell. Obviously, he has the power to raise the dead, and he's able to talk to the dead. I get that. But I don't feel like I really know him anymore as like a person. This obviously is not an origin story. I think the origin story was probably already covered in Jeff Johns' run, so it probably was a thing where they were like, oh, well, it was so recently done, we don't want to do it again. But I didn't read that, so would have been useful. In regards to this, I mean, if there's going to be a zombie apocalypse going on in Forever Evil, I'm down with that. That sounds horrific and terrifying, but at the same time, it seems like it's more of a self-contained story where Coast City is just going to be overrun with zombies. And everyone's going to be like, that's weird that that's happening over there. It has nothing to do with the other people's stuff. So, yeah, either way, I like the art style. I do appreciate a lot of how it's written. I just kind of wish it was a different story that they chose to tell. But I can't blame the story itself for that. So I'll give this one I'll give it a 7.5. It's good. It's a solid book overall. Maybe not the best out of Villains Month, but definitely pretty high up there one. The Flash 23.3, aka The Rogues, written by Brian Buccellato, art by Patrick Zircher. So we open up now in Central City. We see at Iron Heights, we have the Rogues, mainly Captain Cold, Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, and I always forget the Heat one. I want to say Heatstroke, but that's definitely wrong. We'll get to it. So they're all breaking in, and they're trying to get out Trickster. They say, oh, he's been locked up there for too long. The Rogues never leave one of their own behind. So Heatwave, that's his name, Heatwave. So we then see a flashback to them trying to pull this heist. They're trying to break into this bank vault. And they say, oh yeah, we've got this whole plan built out. There are diamond mines underneath of the gem cities. That's why they're called the gem cities. And so we're going to use the mines to get under the bank, and we're going to dig up into it. And that's the plan. And so we see Golden Glider is also in on this plan. And Mirror Master is still stuck in the mirror dimension. He's unable to leave. And so as they start making their way up, they get to the bottom of the vault, but then all of a sudden there's this huge crack in the ground. And it looks as though the foundations that the building the bank is in are not as strong as they thought they were. So at that point, Heatwave's like, well, all right, well, what are we waiting for? Let's get in there. But Golden Glider and Captain Cold point out, no, there are people up in that building, and if we dig any more, if we cause any more problems, the building could fall and people will die, and that's not what the Rogues do. So Golden Glider is currently the leader of the Rogues, and she says, yep, we're calling it off, no more. So they make their way out. So we see they go to a bar later on, they have some drinks. Golden Glider, who is just an astral projection at the current moment, she is unable to interact with anything, and Mirror Master is of course stuck in his mirror realm, so they're kind of just off by themselves. Captain Cold comes over and is just like, hey, guys, sorry you're having a tough time. I will leave you now. Have fun together. So they are just doing their own thing. And Captain Cold just reminisces, saying like, yeah, it's all my fault that we're all like this, especially them. They were the ones who were hit the hardest. And we see the bartender saying, hey, it's last call. You guys need to get out of here. And both Weather Wizard and Heatwave are just passed out drunk. So Captain Cold says, yeah, hey, could I get your help loading them into the mirror dimension? And Golden Glider's like, no. In fact, you got us into this mess. You can figure that out. I'm going to get Mirror Master, my boyfriend, out of the mirror dimension. I'm going to use my powers to do it. And Captain Cold's like, that could kill you, because need I remind you, you're an astral projection of this horribly ill woman in a hospital bed. And she's like, pshaw, go tell it to Trickster. So she flies off. She goes to her hospital room, and she gets in front of a mirror where Mirror Master is, and they give it a shot. And she manages to pull him out into the real world, but as she does, it's too much for her heart, and she goes into cardiac arrest. And we see that her apparition, her astral projection, disappears. So Captain Cold, Heatwave, and Weather Wizard all show up at the room. Captain Cold's freaking out, and he's just like, I'll kill you, Mirror Master. How dare if anything happens to her, I'll kill you. And everyone in the group is like, hey, she made her decision. She was the leader. Same way that you made the decision for us that gave us these horrific powers. We just have to live with it. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're going to pull that up now when my sister is dying? How dare you? You know what? Screw this. The Rogues are done. So he goes out. He reminisces on how in the beginning the Rogues were just, some petty thieves that he organized, and then the Flash came and ruined everything. So then, in order to get one up on the Flash, he gave everybody special powers via this big machine, but it exploded and caused unnecessary complications. So he gets drunk, he goes to the bank that they were going to rob earlier, and he just uses his ice powers to break in broad daylight. One of the cops comes up and is like, Captain Cold, freeze! And he's like, is that a joke? Are you making a pun? So then he goes and he's about to attack the cops. He throws a few punches, but then the rest of the rogues show up through the mirror dimension. They grab him and pull him in, and they're like, dude, look, we get it. We understand you're pissed off. We're sorry that we brought up the whole like thing there. Can we just be cool? Like, we need to be cool with each other. We're the rogues. We stick together. And Captain Cold's like, yeah, okay, look, I know I never really said sorry for the whole exploding and giving you guys powers thing, but I am really sorry. And yeah. And they're just like, no, it's all cool. So do you want to be leader again? And he's like, yeah, okay. Let's go get Trickster out of Iron Heights. So we see, the exact opening to Forever Evil. They start breaking into Iron Heights, but then, what's his name? Quickster? I don't know. Whatever the Johnny Flash, whatever his name is, he runs into Iron Heights, releases all the prisoners, and then the rogues go in afterwards, and they're like, hey, Trickster, you slept through a prison break, man. What is wrong with you? And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. So Captain Cold apologizes, saying, hey, once a rogue, always a rogue. You're back in the group. And by the way, we got this silver coin thing. We're going to go check out what's going on with the secret society over in Forever Evil. So they make their way to the announcement place where the crime syndicate says, hey, Justice League is dead. This world is ours. You work with us. And the rogues are like, whoa, hold on. Flash is dead? You know what that means? We get to run the Gem Cities now. Let's go back home, boys. So they go back to Keystone City, and when they get there, the entire city is razed because of the events that happened in Grodd, which is Flash 23.1, I believe. And they come up and they're just like, oh my God, what happened to our city? And Captain Cold says, well, whatever happened, we're going to hold whoever did it responsible. And it says, to be continued in Forever Evil, Rogues Rebellion #1, which is a little side series off of Forever Evil. So, yeah, that's all that. Honestly, I feel like in The Flash itself, I knew enough about the backstory of these characters that I didn't really need it here, but it is appreciated. Obviously, if you're coming in as a new reader, if you've never experienced the Rogues before, you might come in and be like, I'm sorry, what the hell is a weather wizard? And you get a little bit of understanding here. You get a little bit of, okay, here's the setup and where we're going as we get into this Forever Evil miniseries. So overall, I appreciate it. I think it's a very well-written book. I think the art looks great. I don't really have many problems with this at all. I think the only real critique I have is that it felt like it went back to the well of, oh, I messed up and I caused this horrible accident that gave us these horrific powers like 3 times over the book. Probably could have done it just like twice. Once where he brings it up to start, and once where they say, hey man, it's cool, don't worry about it. Going back that extra time just kind of felt a bit too padding for me, but that's such a small critique, all things considered. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one an 8. I think it does. This is exactly the kind of way that I would like these little miniseries to be set up, where it's, hey, we're welcoming in new readers, we're telling them everything we need to know, and then we are immediately just jumping into the event. We're saying, hey, here's everything you need to know, go for the next issue coming out next month or whatever. So yeah, I'd say this is a solid 8. I really do think it is worth it. Justice League 23.3, aka Dial E, written by China Mieville, art by literally everyone. I'm not kidding. Every single page of this book has a different artist, so there are 21 different artists in this book. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what Dial E is, this is essentially the conclusion, the epilogue chapter to Dial H, which had just wrapped up previous to this, so this isn't going to make any sense if you don't know where we're coming from there. But anyway, we pick up in a town called Littleville, and there's a group of teenagers who apparently are overhearing some guy named Mr. Tibb, I believe, and apparently he's gotten his hands on one of the hero dials, or a dial, I should say, in that he figured out how to make it work by dialing 0833, which notably does not spell hero. And frankly, it's not really sure what it spells. But regardless, these groups of teenagers manage to steal it, and they're like, well, hey, let's go ahead, give it a shot. So they transform, and every single page, we have them transforming into a different thing. They're all villains. They're all bad guys. But we see that every single page, a different member of the group like transforms, or sometimes the same one transforms. And they are basically going around and just causing a bunch of chaos and mayhem to start. Eventually the cops get involved because they transform into like a huge thing that causes some problems. So the cops start chasing after them. And then we also see not only are the cops in on it, but this Tib guy who originally stole this dial also finds out they have it, and he's also after it. So it's just a thing of like, oh, we're going to get you kids, and then they transform into something that like forces them to attack each other or forces them to live out their worst fears. Or I don't know, there's one that they transform into named Rent, which as far as I can tell, he's just like hungry, but he doesn't actually do anything. So that battle between the cops and all that go on. They keep on passing the dial across each other. They keep on turning into different villains until finally we get this sequence where they make their way like through a wall. They have a wall that they phase through to get through away from the police. And we see that the centipede from the Dial H shows up, and he's like, hey, that's my dial. You've got my dial. I sensed it, you using it, and I'm here to take my property back. And so he starts fighting against the kids, going up against their villains with his own, and he basically explains, yeah, here's the deal. That was the dial that I had made. At the end of the series, he had his own dial made, and it doesn't dial H for hero. It dials Q for Qued. And apparently Qued is an old like Latin phrase that means evil or bad or something like that. So because Q is not on a normal dial, it goes to 0 and then it's UED 833. So we see these kids trying to go up against him, but of course he's hyper powerful within his own right. And finally there's just one girl left who's kind of good-hearted. The rest of the group is kind of troublemaker. She's a good-hearted one. She's never actually used the dial at this point, but she gets her hands on it. She's trying to defend herself from Centipede, and it just doesn't work. She's unable to dial. And as we learned in the series, if you're too evil, then the hero dial won't work for you. In this case, because she's too good of heart, the evil dial won't work for her. So Centipede comes over, and he's like, yeah, using my powers of being able to disattach myself from time, I can use this dial and become all the villains at once. And we get this whole page layout, a whole bunch of different villains and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, but no matter what, I'm always Centipede and nothing can stop me. And then something stops him, just whacks him on the back of the head. He's knocked out. And we see that it is Roxy from the series. She comes up and she's like, yeah, it's complicated. Don't worry, girl, you're safe. It's me, Rescue Jill. And obviously that was the identity that Nelson took at the beginning of the series. So it all kind of comes full circle there. But that's it. That's all we get out of it. The Centipede, he escaped at the end of the last issue of Dial H, and we were just like, well, let's wrap that up. Let's put a little bow on that. So I'm sure that nothing I said makes any goddamn sense to anyone who wasn't listening to me explain Dial H before. And even if you did, that might have also not made any sense. But it's a very quick read because every page is just the same thing. It's just them transforming into a new thing, and then they go ahead and fight whoever it is they're fighting at that point, be it the cops, the gangsters, Centipede, whatever. Do I think it is a good epilogue for Dial H? Not really. I think that series had a lot of big things going, and this doesn't really feel like a nice little succinct bow on the whole series. It feels like, oh yeah, we left that plot line open. Let's go ahead and just wrap that up real quick. So it's not bad, but it's also not anything I think is necessary for reading Dial H as a whole. You could just essentially skip over it. I would say ratings-wise, it is probably... I can't give it like a 7. It's probably a 6.5. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's just it's so unnecessary and so confusing, especially when you throw in different artists on every page, that it's actually pretty hard to read. It's hard to figure out exactly what's going on any given page, because by the time you get your bearings, you flip to the next page and everything's changed again. So yeah, I gotta say a 6.5. I like the idea of a Dial H series continuing here, but this just wasn't it. Justice League of America number 7.3, aka Shadow Thief, written by Tom DeFalco, art by Chad Hardin. So Shadow Thief was a Hawkman villain / anti-hero, and I wouldn't blame you for forgetting that. So we open up with this woman. Her name is Aviva. She is the Shadow Thief, and she is falling out of a window off of this huge skyscraper, and she's like, yeah, my mom warned me about this when I joined Mossad, but I think I made the right choice. So we see that as she was thrown from the window, there are some like government-looking guys who are the ones who shot her out, and it's just like, oh yeah, she was interfering with our business. So anyway, we came here for the weapons that you were going to provide us. And there's some other dude in the room who's just like, all right, sure. So then we flash back to her fighting against some Thanagarians, and I guess the big thing that needs to be explained is that her whole thing is she is super duper ultra against all alien life. She sees all extraterrestrials as a threat to mankind, and she is here to put a stop to them. So she's fighting against these Thanagarians and is just straight up killing them for the sole purpose of they're here. So they think they can obviously take her. She wipes the floor with them, and she uses her shadow skin suit to move through shadows. That is its ability. She can take any shadow and show up in any other shadow by passing through this shadow realm. So one day, she finished the Thanagarian thing, and she was like, oh, there's an arms deal going on. One of them I tortured to get that information. I'm going to go stop the arms deal. But as she popped out of one of the shadows, she's like, whoa, hold on. The whole world's going nuts. What's going on? Turns out it's the middle of Forever Evil. So at that point, she's like, well, no time to waste, hops back into Shadow, grabs her bag, goes into the Shadow Realm. We see a whole bunch of monsters are in the Shadow Realm, and they try to attack her, and she's like, well, they can't do anything to me. I have more talent and skill than they do. So she makes her way out, and she starts peeling off her skin suit, which is actual skin at a certain point. It's like symbiote sort of thing, where it hurts her to take it off, but regardless, she still does. And we see she makes her way to a hotel in Dubai where this arms deal is going down. And this is where we, met at the beginning here. We see that she is going up to a room, and she meets up with a guy who she's apparently familiar with. His name's Ramil. And they say like, oh, Aviva, you're a traitor. You've done horrible things. And she walks in the room just being like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. I was just doing my job. And it's like, you killed a superior officer. How was that you doing your job? And it's like, oh, he wouldn't do what was necessary, so I had to take him out and do it. And it's just like, okay, you're definitely going to be killed. I hope you understand that. And she's like, now hold on. Here's the thing. If I hear that you guys are doing an arm deal with Thanagarians, and like, I can't abide that. That's like, every war requires sacrifice here, but we're not going to go that far. And we see a little bit more of her backstory on how we got to this point. Mind you, this is intercut the whole time of her falling out of this building, and it seems like she's trying to do something. I guess get her skin suit back on, but like, it's so intercut that I can't tell. But regardless, apparently when she came to the U.S., she was hired by Argus. Argus made her do a bunch of spy stuff until one day she went to go pick up this briefcase, and she was like, I wonder what's inside. So she opened it up, and apparently her mother and her brother are both like world famous biological chemists or something like that. So she brings this vial of goo to them, and it's like, oh, can you check this out? Because I don't trust Argus. So they open it up, and as soon as they open it up, their skin just starts melting off their bones. And she's like, oh God, what have I done? And she sees at the bottom of this briefcase is the shadow suit. So she goes to put it on, thinking it'll protect her from the biological weapon, not knowing that it lets her travel through shadows. So she goes through shadow. She comes out in front of the Argus, like her supervisor's desk. And it's like, hey, I opened up your vial and it melted my mom and brother. What's up? And he's like, you idiot. You're wearing the suit. You're not supposed to wear the suit. That was for us. And she's like, what do you mean us? And it turns out this guy is a Daemonite, which if you weren't reading Superman, Grifter, or like 3 other books at the beginning of the New 52, I don't blame you, but they were all in that. And so she's like, oh, you aliens killed my mom and my brother, therefore I avenge them by killing you. So at this point, we cut back to in the skyscraper. She's being, told off by, what was his name, Ramil or whatever, saying, hey, I should take you out right here and now. And she's like, hey, you're about to make this arms deal. I should be taking you out. I need to protect not only our home country, but the world. And he's like, okay, fair enough. Anyway, the guys are here to collect. And the guys show up and they're like, hey, I hear you've got some Thanagarian weapons. Who's the chick? And they just blast her out a window. And so we get back to where we opened up with. She takes off a coat she was wearing. She uses the shadow from that to travel through. She shows back up in the hotel room and just immediately kills everybody except Ramil. And Ramil's like, oh my God, you're a monster. You're a horrible killer. And she's like, yeah, but aliens are worse. Don't forget that. So at that point, she takes Ramil's gun and says, now go and tell all the aliens that you've been getting your weapons from to vamoose, or else they're going to have to deal with me, the shadow thief. And so she walks off into a shadowy hallway and disappears. And that's the book. I don't hate it. I want to make that clear. It's not an awful book. It's actually pretty decently well written in terms of the pacing. It gives this action throughout. I'm okay with that. It's just that it's Shadow Thief, who I already am very tenuous on caring about at all. And then the fact that they did the half-hearted attempt of, by the way, guys, this is all happening during Forever Evil. Like, that's the reason we're doing it. See, there's a car being looted over there. This is totally a thing. And I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, the whole thing of Forever Evil, if you remember, is that the moon was pushed in front of the sun. So wouldn't the whole world be in darkness and therefore she is extremely OP right now? But instead, no, it's super sunny and there's not even a shadow she could have used except for her jacket. Like, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just like crazy there. But I feel like this book is so clearly not meant to be a tie-in to Forever Evil and was probably just a missing issue of Hawkman, and they just decided to put it here. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. I didn't think it was a great concept for a book, but it was executed okay. So I guess I will give this one I'll give it a 7. It's okay. It's fine. It's an average book, all things considered. It's not awful. It's not great. It's just there. Wonder Woman 23.1, aka Cheetah, written by John Ostrander, art by Victor Ibanez. So it's a pretty generic Cheetah story here. Not quite her origin, but something to it. We open up in Louisiana. Blackgate Prison has just been let out. Everyone's escaped, including Cheetah, and she makes her way through the bayou and starts attacking all the prison guards that are trying to track her down again. And one of them, as she knocks it down, she literally tears out his heart and says, oh, I dedicate this kill to thee, O goddess of the hunt. Takes a big bite out of it, and then gets a call from the secret society saying, hey, Cheetah, where you at? You on your way? She's like, yeah. I just gotta do a personal thing first, and then I'll be right on my way. So we cut to the emergency command center, who's basically the police that are now dealing with the fact that they had a massive prison break in Louisiana. And we see this Agent Mark Shaw, is now in charge of going down and tracking down Cheetah. And they say, yeah, no, she's got a dad who abandoned her, like up in Chicago. I don't think you really need to check on that. However, the aunt that she grew up with is located in the area, so probably best you start there. And she's got like a cult going on in Idaho, so yeah, check that out. So Mark Shaw is now a Manhunter, and for those of you who know anything about Mark Shaw and or Manhunter, that was a surprise in this book, I'll tell you that at least. So then we see, in another place, in another time, Barbara Minerva, who's of course Cheetah's real identity, is walking through the Argus Black Room with Wonder Woman and says, "Oh man, Wonder Woman, I'm so happy you're my friend." She's like, "I'm happy you're my friend too, Barbara." And she's like, "Hey, check out this sweet knife. It's called the God Slayer, and it's like you, because you Amazons are goddesses, right? And you worship the goddess of the hunt." And Wonder Woman just laughs and laughs and says, "Oh, you stupid bitch. No, none of that is true. We're not goddesses. We're mortal people, and we don't worship the god of the hunt. We worship all the gods. God, where did you get your stupid information from?" And so Cheetah starts getting super angry. She pulls out the knife and stabs it into Wonder Woman's chest and just like, "No, you're wrong. I've been trained in the way of the Amazons longer than you have. I deserve this, and now you will be a true avatar of the goddess of the hunt. You're welcome." And so we see Wonder Woman transform into this deer/cheetah thing, and she gets up and just be like, "I will eat your heart." And then all of a sudden Cheetah wakes up. Of course it was all a dream. She's on a train making her way to Idaho, and she busts out of the side of the train car and goes on her own. So meanwhile, Mark Shaw arrives at this fenced off place called Amazonia. There's a girl with a gun standing outside. And she's just like, "Oh, better turn back the way you came." And she's like, "Actually, I'm a U.S. Marshal, and if you put that rifle up any higher, I will shoot you between your eyes. So here's what's going to happen. I just need to talk to the lady running this place because I got information she might want to know." So she gets into Amazonia, or Shaw gets into Amazonia, and is led around by I think it's Lytle, I believe. I could be wrong on that. We get back to it. Turns out she runs this religious quote-unquote school, which is actually religious towards the Greek goddess of the hunt, and they run this place as essentially an Amazon light sort of cult going on, because they've all got guns and stuff too, so it's not all about that. And she says, "Yeah, no, I train girls here. They go out into the world and they continue with their hunt. And it's not just animals and stuff. It's like hunt for success, hunt for being great. But like, it's still, they're determined. They are militaristic." And Mark basically says, "Yeah, okay. Anyway, Cheetah's on the way. Have you seen her? Do you know where she might be?" And just like, no, I haven't talked to her in a while, but what was the last you heard of her?" She's like, "Well, we just got news as I was driving in here that she went up and killed her deadbeat dad. So that's a thing." It's like, "Oh, well, that was well overdue." And she says, "Okay, well, Barbara also has a brother and a mother. Have you heard from them at all recently?" And she's like, "No, we kind of left off on bad terms." And it turns out that the brother was also welcome to train in Amazonia. And there was a final task that Barbara and her brother had to go through. And that was Hunger Games. They fight each other out in the woods, hunting each other until one of them dies. And the mother is freaking out, just like, "Oh, this is inhumane. This is cruel. These are my children. How could you do this?" And just like, "Pshaw, this is..." And the woman's name is Lyta, by the way. It's like, this is their final task. Only the strong will inherit the earth. So we see them out in the woods, and Barbara sets up a trap that her brother falls for, and so she's able to shoot her brother in the back. And she's like, "Oh, yes, I have succeeded. I have killed my brother. What now, Aunt Lyta?" And Lyta's like, "Great. Go out into the world and find the God Slayer, the knife that will be able to please the goddess of the hunt." And she's like, "Will do." And then a couple years pass, and she comes back, and she's like, "Hey, I got the knife." It's like, "Great. Plunge it into your chest." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "Yep, that's what the goddess of the hunt wants. That's how you'll become an avatar. You are worthy. Do it." And so she stabs herself in the chest and becomes Cheetah. And Mark Shaw's like, "Okay, that's all weird and crazy, but also not the reason I just want to know where Cheetah is. That's literally the only thing I care about here. Also, you guys are like super crazy." And at that point, she basically says like, "Well, you should drop your weapon because you're surrounded." And turns out the Amazonians are like, "Yeah, we're going to hunt you now." And Lyta steps up and she's like, "You will be my hunt. Start running. You get a 5-minute head start." So he runs out into the woods. Lyta gives chase. He actually puts up a pretty good fight. He hides pretty well from her, but he does end up taking an arrow straight to the chest and is taken down. And Lyta's like, "Oh, you were good, but you weren't good enough to stop me." And as she pulls back the bow, Cheetah jumps out and attacks Lyta. And Lyta's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold on. You can't kill him. He's my killing." He's like, "Oh, I wasn't hunting him. I was hunting you." So at that point, she pulls out the Godslayer knife and is just like, "Why would you come after me?" I could attack you with this knife and take away your powers right now. Those are the rules. And she's like, no, if I kill you, you're the last link in the world to Barbara Minerva. Once you're dead, I can be Cheetah and Cheetah alone. And so she attacks Lyta, doesn't get stabbed by the knife, rips out her heart and says, oh, goddess of the hunt, this is for you, and now I'm done with you. Cheetah is working alone. So Mark Shaw stands up, has the Godslayer knife, and is like, hey, Cheetah, you're under arrest. And she's like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. So at that point, the Secret Society gets their teleporter to show up, being like, Cheetah, you're supposed to be meeting up with us like a day ago. What's going on, man? And she's like, oh, nothing. You can take me now. And says, well, Mark Shaw, see you around. And she's like, oh, I will hunt you, Cheetah. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the theme of the book now, isn't it? And she teleports out. And so Mark Shaw's left standing there with a Godslayer knife saying, yes, it's a promise. I will hunt you down, Cheetah. So we got ourselves a Manhunter. He's got himself a magic knife. Cheetah is, of course, a part of the Secret Society and doing stuff there. I mean, it's a good book. It's perfectly fine. I feel like it may contradict some stuff that I remember from Justice League. I think that was issue like 18 or so, but I can't be bothered to go back and check. So I'm going to go ahead and assume it's all perfectly in line, and I enjoyed it. Art was good as well. I don't really have any issue with it. My only real critique is just the unbelievability of Cheetah was raised as an Amazon and then just happened to befriend Wonder Woman when she arrived in Man's World. Like, that's just a bit much for me, but comics are always filled with these little conveniences. So yeah, I'll say I'll give it a 7.5. It's above average, it's good, but it doesn't quite strike the great category yet. Teen Titans 23.2, aka Deathstroke, written by Corey May and Duma Wensha, art by Moritat, Angel Unzueta, and Robson Roca. So it's kind of an origin story for Deathstroke, but honestly, we've already gotten that like 3 times over the New 52 so far, so it's a lot more of just, hey, here's a different adventure he was on. So we open up in an urban city in America, deep into the War on Terror, and we see this militant group just standing around, enjoying the silence, when all of a sudden Deathstroke breaks through the wall, and he's like, hey, Deathblow, what are you doing here? And Deathblow's like, I got a job, same as you. And he's like, right. So here's the thing. How about we both just step aside and we pretend this didn't happen and I don't have to kill you? And Deathblow's like, you know, I can't do that. I gotta do my job. I gotta protect this guy. And he's like, right, well, sorry to hear that. And so they all start fighting. We'd see Deathstroke, you know, they do a thing in an elevator and the elevator snaps. Deathblow's kicking them, doing whatever. And Deathstroke says, oh, you can't, or Deathblow says, you can't kill me. And he says, I don't need to kill you. I just need you out of the way. So stand down. And turns out, I think this is Michael Cray, because we then cut to a different thing later. So it says 30 seconds later, we get him. He's already got a sniper rifle set up. He's aiming it at some politician. He pulls the trigger and we slow motion see the bullet slowly leave the barrel. And he's like, you know, it takes a quarter of a second for this bullet to travel the distance it needs to. A lot can happen in a quarter of a second. And I'm not going to say all the things he says, but just know it's a framing device where he says, like, in a quarter of a second, you could have your entire life change in all these different ways. So we see him in Bosnia back before, like, superheroes and all that. He's in a war-torn country and he needs to drop off this bomb at a target. So Michael Cray is defending him. He runs over, he sets the bomb. Turns out, though, it is actually a children's hospital. And as it explodes, he sees it kill a bunch of small children. And he resigns from the military because of that, becoming a private contractor. So then we see, oh yes, in a quarter of a second, you can get emotional response, as is the birth of his son, Grant. And he's like, yeah, no, Grant was awesome. Grant was great. I taught him everything he needed to know. And we see them in North Korea some years later. Grant and Slade, with Slade already in his Deathstroke gear, they're stopping a nuclear missile launch out of North Korea. And Grant essentially saves Slade's life several times by stopping some people who were going to attack him. They manage to make their way out of the building. And they go and they stay with a local family or something like that, saying, "Oh yes, thank you so much. We're happy that you could give us this hospitality." And then all of a sudden, the house is attacked, the family is attacked, and Grant is shot several times in the chest, seemingly killing him. And as he reaches out for his son, his mask is up, and he gets shot in the eye, thus saying, "Here's how he lost his eye." So then he immediately kills all the soldiers that came and attacked them in revenge for his son. So as he does that, he realizes, wait a minute, hold on, there's only one person in the world who knew that we would be there in that house. It turns out it's his wife, who sold him up the river because I guess the military is putting pressure on the family, saying, "Hey, tell us where your husband is." And we see the other son, I think it's Jericho, is saying, "Oh, you did the right thing, mother." So then we finally cut back to real time of Deathstroke shooting this politician, shoots him in the shoulder, like blows off his arm seemingly. And we see this young child is like, "Oh no, daddy." And Deathstroke packs up his gear, gets his money, but then is re-attacked by Deathblow and the rest of the group. He manages to make short work of them, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know I'm not going to be around forever. So when I'm gone, I'm going to make sure that I can keep my daughter safe by using this money for that." And we see a very young Rose Wilson saying, "Oh, Daddy, I'm glad you're home from your safari." And we see the briefcase opens up. It's full of money in his Deathstroke gear. His wife comes up saying, like, "Oh, you're lying to your kid now on a safari, huh?" And it's just like, yeah, well, I can't tell Rose yet about what I do. And our final panel is Rose looking at the Deathstroke mask, very happy, very attentive, I guess you would say. And that's it. I'm going to be honest, Deathstroke itself as a series, I think it ran for like 18 issues, somewhere around there. I feel like I've read this issue. I feel like everything that was in this issue I've already seen. Obviously, it is its own original story. It was told decently enough, but it doesn't feel original. It feels like they've basically, between Deathstroke, Team 7, and I think it was Ravagers, they wrote themselves into a corner of, we have covered everything there is to know about Slade's origin story. So what more is there to really do? And the answer is nothing. There's nothing more to really do. They've covered it. They've done it all. So I don't dislike this as an origin. I think it's fine, but I think it is just everything I've seen before. So overall, I've got to give this one I got to give it a 6.5. It didn't hit me. If it were any other character, it probably would have maybe hit like a 7, but I think that because it is Deathstroke, who I've seen so much of, I'm just kind of sick of him. And then there's a thing at the end here saying, "Oh yeah, and also check out Forever Evil #2 for the Teen Titans." It's like this had nothing to do with the Teen Titans. Not at all. Deathstroke is a character that can exist on his own. I don't understand why it had to be a Teen Titans tie-in, but hey, here we are. So 6.5. Justice League Dark number 23.3, aka Eclipso, written by Dan DiDio, art by Philip Tan. So, who here remembers the Black Diamond probability? Because this book is the only thing I've ever seen mention it. So, we open up meeting a man named Gordon Jacobs. He apparently is a world-famous solar scientist, and he had this idea to build a solar city. And it failed, and a lot of people died, and he is now a laughingstock in the scientific community. And we see that he is basically just locked himself in his house and is refusing to leave. So one day, UPS guy shows up, and he's like, "Hey, I got a package for you. I was super insistent you get it. I even require a signature." And he just grabs the box, closes the door, and the guy's like, "My signature." So he goes in and he opens it up and he pulls out the Black Diamond and he says, "Ah, yes, it says that there's a curse on this, but I have a theory that it will be the cure to all of my problems." And so he goes to his computer, starts up a web chat with some dude here named Jonah something. Who cares? Jonah Bennett, that's it. And he's like, "Hey, I found it. I got the Black Diamond." And Jonah's like, "Dude, I don't want anything to do with you. You are bad news. And he's like, no, you gotta hear me out. The Black Diamond, it's totally what we need to make this work. And he's like, you're like, I have indulged your delusions enough. You were engaged to marry my daughter, after all, and then your insanity ruined that and has broken her heart. I don't want anything to do with you. And he's like, what do you mean was engaged? I thought that was still on. He's like, seriously? You still think that was on? We haven't seen you in months, dude. Don't call us anymore. And as he's yelling at this guy over the screen saying like, oh, you can't treat me this way, the Black Diamond starts whispering to him saying like, oh, hang up on him. Screw him. Forget him. He's not worth it. So then he looks inside the Black Diamond and we see inside is Eclipso. And he's like, hey, buddy, I'm here to help you out. So he shuts off the web chat with Jonah and starts talking to the Diamond. And inside, Eclipso is like, hey, yeah, I'm Eclipso. I'm here to be your servant. See, me and you, we were both like really betrayed, and we're now imprisoned in these four walls. And so, yeah, we're totally buddies now. You can trust me. And he says, okay, well, who are you? And the guy explains, Eclipso explains, I am the first shadow. When God said, let there be light, I'm the first thing that the light didn't reach. And he's like, oh, hold on, you're saying there's a God? And he's like, yeah, but don't interrupt. I got more to my story. And then he says, did you read the Black Diamond probability tie-ins? And Gordon, of course, says no, because nobody did. And he gives a whole 2-page spread here saying, I appeared in all these books for like 2 or 3 issues, and I stuck around for like a couple minutes each time, but it never really stuck because I've been waiting for the right person. I've been waiting for you, Gordon. And so at that point, Gordon's like, no, you don't know anything about me. And he's like, but when you touched my diamond, I did learn everything about you and how you were a brilliant scientist and you met the love of your life and you had this idea for a solar city and then it burned to the ground and then you were an outcast and totally ashamed. And then you got the diamond because you thought it would help. And he's like, yeah, I guess that's pretty much my life. You know everything about me now. And he's like, right, totally, cool. So here's the thing. I can help you get all of that back. You just need to work with me here. And he's like, all right, what do I need to do? And Eclipso says, you need to use the diamond and cut yourself. Make yourself bleed. And he's like, what? Why would I do that? He's like, you just got to do it. It's unlimited power. Come on, just go for it. And so he cuts his finger. And he's like, now what? And he's like, now do it again. And he cuts himself again and again and again and again and again. Until finally his entire arm is just nothing but scratches of blood. And Gordon's like, how many times am I going to have to do this? And Eclipso goes, oh, just the once. I was just messing with you. So at that point now, he hears a car coming up the road. He knows that it's Jonah, who's concerned after he hung up all of a sudden. And Eclipso's like, okay, well, let me handle him. Me and you are one now. We got a blood bond. Just shut up for a bit and I'll deal with this. So Jonah makes his way into the house. He didn't realize how much of a shut-in Gordon really was. And he sees blood on the floor and he's like, oh, God, Gordon, if I had known you would have hurt yourself, I never would have shut you out. And then Eclipso's like, I'm going to go ahead and doubt that. You were kind of a prick the whole time. And he says, what? Who is that? Step out of the shadows. And he's like, that's a funny story. So he basically says, hi, Gordon wanted me to talk to you. He wants you to suffer the way that you made him suffer. And so Eclipso uses his weird shadow magic stuff, grabs Jonah and just starts like strangling him with the darkness. And then he holds up the Black Diamond and says like, now here's the thing. This Black Diamond needs to feed on human life. So I'm just going to do this. And he holds the diamond up to him and it starts draining away his life. And we just see a big old yarg. So at that point, Gordon starts to fight back. He's like, no, what have you done? He's like, I just did the things that are in your subconscious. And he's like, yeah, but that's my subconscious. That's my conscious. I wouldn't do that for real. He's like, pshaw, you totally were just waiting for an excuse. So Gordon wrestles back control. We see that Eclipso is back in the diamond. And he's like, I'm going to destroy the diamond and never let you out again. He's like, okay, well, if you destroy the diamond, you're going to kill yourself because we're blood linked now. He's like, fine, I'll bury the diamond where no one can ever find it. And he's like, okay, you can do that. But the father of the girl you really like just died. So why don't you go and comfort her first? And then you can worry about burying the diamond. And he's like, yeah, I'll worry about burying the diamond later. Let me go talk to the girl first. And then we see that, it's Eclipso controlling him. And that's the issue. I like it. I think I've always been interested in Eclipso as a character, and that was probably the most underwhelming part of the Black Diamond probability as a quote-unquote event when I covered it, just because it was not a character. It was just this abstract thing of, if you pick up the Black Diamond, you turn evil briefly. And then obviously in Sword of Sorcery, we had him be this full character. I can't even remember his name anymore, but he wasn't Eclipso. So it just seems like this is kind of a retcon issue where we're like, no, he was over in there. We're not ignoring that. But now he's got this other thing going on. And I like the idea of him, he has to use a mortal host, blah, blah, blah. It's all fine concepts. I think my biggest problem with the issue is that it's just a wall of constant exposition of people saying the things instead of, doing the things, The best kick I got out of this book was the cutting himself scene, which sounds dark saying it like that, but, it was this thing where it was okay, action has been taken here. We have seen something instead of just two people talking into a rock, So it's not an awful issue. I do really like the art, and I like the concept of Eclipso, but I don't know. This one was just a little bit for me. That being said, I am still going to give it a straight 7. Don't ask me why. It just is where it feels like it belongs. It's maybe the art makes up for it enough, but a 7 feels good. Swamp Thing 23.1, aka Arcane, written by Charles Soule, art by Jesus Saiz. So, Arcane is in hell. Mind you, he's sitting at a tree just looking dead-eyed, and we zoom out and we see that he is actually in a paradise. It's beautiful, there's a babbling brook, there's a bunch of flowers and bunnies hopping around, but because Arcane is so entranced with death and horrific things like that, this is his personal hell. And he sees a tiny little bunny jumping by, and he's like, I know this isn't going to work. I have no reason to believe this is going to work, but I got to give it a shot. And he grabs the bunny, tears it in half, and sets the bunny down in front of him. And he's like, okay, all I got to do is stare at this bunny until it starts to rot, and then I can use that to just get a tiny little taste of the rot again. And so he stares and stares and stares for seemingly an eternity, and he just doesn't take his eyes off the bunny until finally a tiny little wind or something like that passes by. He loses sight for just a second. He looks away for just a fraction of a second, and then as he looks back, the bunny is back in one piece and is just hopping along merrily. And he's like, God damn it, no! And so he stabs his own eyes out, falls dead, and we see another Anton Arcane is just coming to be. And so he is in an entire hell made by the Parliament of Decay, where nothing ever decays. It is perfect and pristine forever. So at that point, Abby Arcane shows up, just teleports into the world, because this is made by the Parliament of Decay, which she is now the avatar of, and she starts using the rot powers on Anton, and she's like, yep, I'm just going to give him a little taste, let him know what he's missing, just so I can use him a little bit. However, as soon as it touches him, he basically starts getting super powered from it. He gets bigger, bulkier, and he starts yanking the rot out of Abby, and she's like, oh, okay, too much. She forms a sword and cuts his hand off, and just like, hey, yeah, sorry. Here's the thing. I have come to you here in your own personal hell, not to free you, not to give you what you want, though I will use it as a bargaining chip. No, instead, I am here for you to tell me what happened to my mom. Tell me about my mother. And she recounts the few memories she has. She remembers her mom reading to her. She remembers her mom arguing with Anton while he was still basically human. And she remembers her mom sending her away to live with other family members. And then she remembers living with these other family members as Anton shows up and kills the family members, drags Abigail back to his castle, and basically grooms her into becoming a new avatar of the Rot. So all that stuff, that's all she can remember from her childhood. But as she becomes the Avatar, she's slowly getting her memory back in pieces. And she remembers her mother's name is Ilsa. And so Anton's like, oh, yeah, Ilsa, I remember her. Such a lovely woman. Yeah, of course. And he's like, did you kill her? Did you kill my mother? And it's like, no, I did not lay a finger on your mother. Like, Ilsa was, look, if you want me to share, I need you to give me more of the rot. And she's like, you'll get that afterwards. Tell me. And so he's like, all right, fine. It began when I was 12. And she's like, no, I don't want your life history. He's like, no, it's important. It began when I was 12. I was out in Belarus, and that's where I grew up. And out in the forest one day, I found a decaying body of a rabbit in a trap. And I don't know what came over me, but I just started eating it. And I felt so damn good afterwards. I thought, like, oh, maybe I'd poisoned myself. But no, I felt great. And so I continued to do that sort of stuff until one day Parliament of Decay came to me and said, you're going to be our avatar. And so I went through and I became Avatar of the Rot, and I just killed a bunch of people. That was kind of my thing. I liked killing a lot. And he's like, all right, now give me another taste. And she's like, you didn't even, like, begin to talk about my mother. No, you're not getting another taste. And he's like, well, I don't remember much then, unless you want to give me another taste of the rot. And she's like, fine, whatever. Gives him a little taste. And he's like, okay. So, as you know, as Avatar of the Rot, my main focus is I needed to fight against the green and the red. And so I killed many swamp things and I killed many animal mens. But in the end, I really enjoyed serving in that, basically killing normal people. That's the thing I like doing the most. However, one day I thought, can I cause rot and decay without death? Is it possible to have rot and decay without killing something? So I had to explore that idea. And at that point, he basically says, like, oh, yeah. I know you know all about this. I'm sure that's just been itching at your mind ever since you became Avatar of the Rot. Don't you just have that urge, that deep down desire to just see something rot and decay? And she's like, shut up. I don't want to hear it. Continue with the story. So one day they were out playing in like a babbling brook or whatever, and he was holding Ilsa's hand. And then all of a sudden her hand started hurting. And they went to the doctor, and turns out that it is essentially a flesh-eating bacteria on her hand. And so they say, oh, we don't have to remove it. What we're going to do is we're going to cut out the infected tissue, get you a skin graft, and then you'll be good as new. And they do that, and they show the skin graft and all that. And it's just like, okay, she'd taken the rot. She had taken the rot and survived. So that means I was able to cause decay without death, but I had to push it further. And he kisses her on the cheek, and we see that she needs a skin graft on her cheek. And we see he touches her in different places, and over again, she requires these skin grafts until finally she starts having to get skin from like donors and stuff like that. And she becomes just this horrific patchwork person who rotted from the inside, basically. And he's like, yeah, no, she survived anything. She could survive me. She was strong like that, Ilsa. And she's just like, excuse me, it sounds to me like you killed my mother. It sounds to me like you're the reason she's dead. Like, what the hell? You said you didn't do that. And it's like, what? Oh, no, Ilsa wasn't your mother. Ilsa was some random street whore that I picked off the street to act as your mother as you were growing up. I made you believe that. But no, your mother did not die by my hand. As it turns out, when you were a child, you were already predisposed to the rot, and you reached out and you touched your mother one day, and you killed her. And she, again, just freaks out. She's like, no, that can't be the case. That's not true. Screw you. You're never going to feel the rot ever again. I'm out of here. And she starts to portal her way out, and he's just like, all right, well, we'll see about that. And as she's just about portaled out, Anton rips out his eye and throws it into the portal, escaping this personal hell. And we see a suburban mother and son. The son comes in and is about to take a bite out of an apple. The mom stops him saying, whoa, hold on there, Johnny. That apple looks rotten and it's completely black. And she tosses it away in the trash can. And we see, as the apple's in the trash can, it opens up and there is his eye, having made it back into the real world. So, can't keep a good rot avatar down, I guess. I really enjoyed this. Obviously, all of the Arcane stuff happened before Charles Soule hopped on to Swamp Thing, but I think he has a real story to tell here if he ever wants to bring him back, because this was very creatively well done. It did a great job of explaining the character of Anton Arcane while also keeping it light, in as light as it can be, of he's stuck in this essentially heaven, which is his own hell. So it's clever. It's well thought out. I enjoyed it. So yeah, I gotta say this is a I'll give this one an 8.5. I think this one is a really up there, and I really love the art style as well. So yeah, 8.5. I'm down with it. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this September 18th, 2013. And I know that I talked about this comic like over an hour ago at this point by like a significant margin. But when I said Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins, I want you to know that I had to sit and think for a minute of whether I wanted to say Ra's or Raish, because I think I've only really encountered him as a character on this show like twice. And I think I said it different both times. But I am settling on Ra's because it's the way I was raised, okay? I saw Batman Begins, they said it like that, and then I could not be changed after the fact. If you have a problem with that, please let me know in the comments, because honestly, I need some engagement, and that's just a very poor ploy to do that. Have you ever noticed that YouTubers do that? They say something stupid and then say, if you disagree, hit me up in the comments. Obnoxious as hell. Anyway, next week, we have comics. We have the final week of Villains Month coming out. And I gotta admit, this one just kind of flew right by. This month went a hell of a lot faster than Zero Month did. That one took forever. But this next week, we've only got 12 of them coming out. Let me go ahead and tell you what we're looking forward to. We have Bane, Killer Croc, Man-Bat, Metallo, Doomsday, Parasite, Sinestro, Ocean Master, The Secret Society, Black Adam, and The Firstborn. And oh, I'm sorry, it seems I've missed one here. The Joker's daughter is also getting one. And you thought hell was bad. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know why they were pushing Joker's daughter here, but they did. Now we're stuck with it for life. So check that out next week. But hey, if you have any thoughts on the Joker's daughter, or anything at all that I've said over the past, I don't know, like 104 weeks, go ahead and hit me up on the comments down below. I also have a Discord, a Patreon, a Reddit. All of that stuff is in the description, however it is you are watching or listening to this podcast. So be sure to check that out. But yeah, that'll do it for me. I'm sure next week I'll have some extra thing to say about the end of Villains Month, but for now, I'm going to save it for then. So thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you are consuming this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and as always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.